with the fact the session would be recorded for those that are unable to sort of attend live, so to speak. So just to introduce myself, so I'm Paul, I'm the Apprenticeship Director at Oxford Professional Education. We're a relatively small training provider based in North Oxford, so just in Summertown. If you are passing by at any stage, please do say hi and pop in. So I'm conscious that we do have quite an intensive agenda to get through, actually, so I'll try to keep it as brief and succinct as possible. And okay, so I'm down for the welcome and skills board update and also a bit of a general update. So if I start by sort of referencing the skills board meeting, so Sally, Mark and I attended the last skills board meeting, which was back on the 12th of September. The format has changed slightly now, and I think it's probably an eminently sensible approach insofar as it's a combined skills board meeting and business support subgroup meeting. So the two subgroups sort of come together and combined as one. There are a lot of synergies, there are a lot of crossovers there, so it makes perfect sense, really. So some of the headline points from the last skills board meeting. In essence, one of the elements was to do with the government's review of LEPs in their entirety, etc., and what the government's thoughts are in relation to that. So the papers were published, and fundamentally, it's going to kind of mean that the transfer of the core functionality will be sort of moved across to combined stroke local authorities, depending on whether it's a combined authority area or a local authority area. But fundamentally, the message from the Oxfordshire area is it's kind of business as usual. So at this stage, it's not anticipated there'll be any sort of significant seismic changes at all. So kind of pretty much the status quo remains. So that's really good news because it is a very proactive LEP organisation. I'm sure we'll all agree on that front. So it's key that we continue that momentum. So the local skills improvement plan, the infamous LSIP, the report has been published, and I'm certainly not going to steal Mark's thunder because there is a session on that in due course. It may be that Mark has to disappear, so we'll sort of manage that as and when, but there is a specific section in relation to the presentation of the final reports. There was a really insightful overview of LMI analysis provided by one of the analysts at Oxfordshire County Council. Jamie did a really sort of thorough and insightful session. There's an awful lot of data available, actually, so it's well worth familiarising yourself with that and perhaps establishing contact, because there's some really good stuff that is available. So I would encourage you to make full use of that. The forthcoming meeting of the LEP board, which was scheduled for late November, has in fact been cancelled because there's going to be a bit of a change in structure and format, etc. So all will be revealed following the December meeting, I understand. So there's a few changes afoot on that front. Be interesting to see what the results of that are and how it pans out in due course. So okay, that's kind of a very whistle-stop overview of the LEP Skills Board meeting because I'm conscious of time. Mark, Sally, any sort of specifics to add in relation to that at all?
No, I think that's brilliant, Paul. I think just from a LEP point of view, just to let everybody know, we are fully funded to March 25 and looking at our future funding and how we can achieve that moving forward. So we are looking to, we're not going anywhere. We're staying put and, you know, carrying on the good work, like I said. So yeah, so everybody, please, no concerns there. So we're carrying on and cracking on as normal.
Perfect. Thanks ever so much, Sally. And yeah, just to sort of reiterate that I think that's music to all of our collective ears, actually. So yeah, please continue doing the great work that you are at the moment. So much appreciated. Thank you. So in terms of a quick whistle-stop generic overview, Mel, if I can ask you to sort of ping across the slide, please. Next slide. So we're sort of deep in the throes of parties, conservative and political parties conferences. So the headline news, of course, this is going to be no great surprise for anyone, is the Advanced British Standard. Ironically, of course, announced with a lot of fanfare and publicity during T-level week that T-levels are going to be scrapped should we remain with a Conservative government. So dare I say, it's fair to say that there's a degree of political upheaval on the horizon for the educational sector once again. So be interesting to see how this one pans out. So that, of course, was the big news. It's already been given the acronym ABS, so no pun intended, well, every pun intended. They're putting the brakes on T-levels moving forward. So I think the ethos behind it in terms of the parity they're seeking between academic and vocational technical education is very, very laudable. But the irony is not lost on me that we've spent £1 billion on T-levels, and potentially we will see the demise of T-levels moving forward. Of course, all bets are off should there be a change of colour in government, etc. And I couldn't resist putting in there Gillian Keegan's sort of observation that she's amazed that as an apprenticeship collective, we do not achieve a 99% success rate. So I will just leave that thought with you, and we'll remain apolitical and not comment any further on that. But it's an interesting observation, I would suggest, in terms of why aren't we hitting a 99% achievement rate. So the headline news from Labour and their conference. Again, this is pretty old news, if I'm honest, that they're looking to introduce a new oversight scrutiny body called Skills England. Skills England, their remit will be to determine which qualifications will be included and fundable via the apprenticeship levy. So I believe the plan is that 50% will be ring-fenced still for apprenticeships, with the remaining 50% available for these qualifications yet to be determined. I think there's probably some value in it. It's a moot point, no doubt. It's also quite a contentious point in certain respects, but it's certainly from an employer perspective, it gives the employers a little bit more flexibility, arguably, dare I say, than what they have currently in terms of utilisation of their funding. They're looking to introduce a dashboard grading system in terms of Ofsted inspections. So rather than getting away from that one word, infamous make or break, do or die grading for us all. So I'd be interested to see what the content of that is. And of course, as always, the devil is in the detail. What will it constitute? What will it measure? What will it cover? My immediate observations are, how is this going to link in with the accountability framework? Is it going to be duplication? Is it going to be different metrics? So I think there's work to be done there in terms of how the two are joined up essentially. And an interesting one would be the introduction of technical excellence colleges. These will be funded via the LSIP bodies. It does beg the question, are these going to be rebranded Institute of Technologies? What are they? Are they going to be in competition with the IoTs? Are we going down a different route? So it'll be interested to see, a bit of detail in relation to that. And again, I would welcome any comments that people have who may be a lot more versed and au fait in the matter than what I am in terms of how they would envisage the technical excellence colleges working. Then we move on, last but not least, to the Lib Dem and their party conference. And the headline news, I suppose, is their proposal that the pupil premium will be extended to cover 16 to 18-year-olds, which I think will be welcome news for the sector in its entirety. And again, a bit like with the Labour Party, they're looking at a sort of scorecard approach in relation to Ofsted, rather than perhaps, dare I say, sort of relying on that binary one-word make or break statement. So be interested to see, as again, the devil is in the detail, how that will work and what the nuances are around it. But I think possibly I would speak for the majority. Please do correct me if I'm wrong on this front, when I think we do need to have an open discussion in relation to the somewhat binary almost pass-fail regime that we have at the moment, and a slightly more balanced and nuanced take, I would suggest, is probably to be welcomed. But again, happy to open into debate and discussion on that further. So that's kind of the sort of headline news. Probably no great shakes for most people there. Mel, if I could ask you to ping on to the next slide, please. Sounded like Chris Whitty here. So there is some good news, which is finally we have some parity in terms of the apprenticeship funding for functional skills, and indeed the GCSE English and Maths resits. So that's great news. Again, dare I say, the devil is in the detail. When's this coming into play? And forgive me if I've missed some sort of correspondence in that respect. I don't think they've necessarily determined when that's that uplift is going to come into play. But again, please do comment if you've got a specific date that you're aware of. In terms of sort of general administrative housekeeping, the big news, of course, is R14 looms large. So this is getting towards the final stages. Please do check your data. Make sure you get your R14 return in, but equally as importantly, it's the last chance to check through your qualification achievement rates. Are they in line with your expectations? Any anomalies there? No doubt the service desk will be inundated at this particular time of year. So I would actively encourage you to get any queries or questions in sooner rather than later. And similarly, of course, ensure you run the DSATs, get that up to date as well. This is really your last chance, and it's better to do it now when you've got a little bit of time rather than when you receive the phone call that you're going to have a full funding assurance review. So it's good to get that in the bag. And it'd be interesting to see what the Chancellor has to say in his autumn statement, which is due next month. So again, that may give us some further clarity. It may well not. Arguably, there's been a position recently whereby I get the impression we're almost in PERDA already into PERDA. So there hasn't been any particular great revelations come forward. But having said that, it's interesting that Rishi's big announcement was front and centre at his party conference. So it's good that education has a voice, and further education, more importantly, has that voice front and centre. So that was really encouraging news, if nothing else. Right, well, I think that's probably the end of my whistle stop there. So any sort of questions or queries before we sort of plough on into the main body of the meeting? No, can't see anything come through.
Not for me, Paul.
Sorry if I missed one. Do apologise. Yeah.
No, sorry, Paul. I was just saying none from me. Sorry.
Oh, apologies. Sorry, I misheard. I do apologise. So, okay, thanks ever so much. So, okay, right. I'm conscious of time. Sorry, we're running over a little bit already. So, if I can hand over to Sally to give us an update in relation to skills boot camps and, of course, the Oxfordshire Apprenticeship Awards. So, a date for Paul. Everyone's diary, folks. So
perfect. Yeah, thanks very much. I really wanted to give everybody a very early heads up about our proposed skills boot camps application, which we submitted to the Department of Education last week. Based on LSIP, I know that we've got Simon that's going to talk about the LSIPs, local skills improvement plans. We kind of call them LSIPs, and actually what the recommendations are from that document. But basically, boot camps are very heavily mentioned in the document as an opportunity for really employers to help work with providers to create courses, flexible courses, about 16 weeks, based on their in-demand skills. We're looking potentially to deliver, if we get the go-ahead, of course, from April of next year for the financial year till March 25. Meeting the local skills improvement plans priority sectors. We're asking employers, on the next slide is going to show actually the courses that we've proposed to Department of Education, to get in touch if they are interested in having a conversation, because actually those people that are on the course, we would want to be offering an interview to them on their completion. And actually what's exciting about this is they're available, really, they're free to those people who were looking to reskill. those over 50s, people that are self-employed, or even actually that self-refer themselves. There's a cost associated if you're an employee and your business puts you on the course, but that's something that's about 10% for an SME or 30% cost for a large business. So Mel, would you like to go to the next slide, please? Next one again, Mel, if you can. I think it's a bit slow on the internet today. There we go. So these are the courses that we're proposing to Department of Education. There's 10 courses. And what's going to happen is that we will put out all of the providers, we're going to actually put it out to tender, all of these courses. So we will send out, once we get the go ahead and we know what we're doing from the Department of Education, we will invite providers, independent, further education, higher education providers to tender to deliver these courses with the numbers that we're looking to achieve from them for that financial year. So I just thought this might be of interest to you within the group. Really, we're looking to get yourselves to really look and work with us and work with businesses to create courses that we know that businesses want, that have got potential needs, particularly around green. You can see green's pretty heavily mentioned here, and really trying to fill that gap. I think we're looking at total, it's just over about 330 places that we're trying to fill for next year. So we need to hit the ground running. So that's going to be moving forwards. We're going to be looking at this quite heavily towards the end of this year to really start getting that delivery started in April. So hopefully that'll be interesting, or certainly once we get more information, I will ensure that you get a copy. Just make sure we've got your current email address, please. Okay, next slide, please, Mel. Just some information from us. So we have created a training provider directory. So this, I know that earlier in the year you very kindly supported our careers leaders at that meeting at Unipart. We've got career leaders that are really keen to know what courses you are offering as training providers in order to then signpost young people to do the courses that you might be offering. But we need you to work with us. We've created this directory on our microsite, but we would really like and invite you to put the details of your company and also the courses that you're offering, because then we're signposting career leaders to this. And they can then reach out to you and say, could you come and do a talk about this course that you're doing? Or we've got people that are interested in this. Can we get more information? So we're trying to bridge that gap between yourselves and career leaders, and really trying to help them understand what opportunities are. So it's a win-win. It's totally free. It doesn't cost you anything, just a little bit of your time. So we will share the slides, but so you've got that email address if you need it, that OxLEP Skills co.uk training providers, but please go on that and just pop your details in. Mel, would you like to go to the next slide? We've also created a training provider network LinkedIn group, and we're inviting you to actually join the group. Again, totally free. What we'd like to do, and Mark, do you want to just quickly talk about why we're doing it?
Yeah, just to really try and link us all together a bit. I think it's great to have so many people on this call today, but the key thing that I wanted to get out of the network is to be able to advise our companies if they're looking for training, if they're looking for apprenticeships, whatever it might be, in an area of the business that I don't deliver. I want to be able to quite quickly be able to find another training provider and be able to refer them over to somebody else to work with, and hopefully vice versa if in a business you're working with, just trying to get that joined up approach really between all of the providers and being able to quite quickly get people's contacts and that sort of thing, and to share information, to contact each other if you've got questions or whatever it might be really. So I think it was Sally actually, her one good idea of the year, I think we called it, who came up with doing it on LinkedIn, which is a great platform to do it on. So yeah,
Yep, thanks, Mark. So yeah, so it's there. So please again join it. We just want to make it vibrant. We just really appreciate that everybody's a bit disparate. We want to try and bring everybody together, share best practice, share good news. Be good to kind of have that quite live. So that's another opportunity for you. Mel, next slide, please. And then finally, we've talked about the awards. It is a year-round program to deliver. Mel does an amazing job leading and managing on that on behalf of OxLEP, but we're really asking for businesses and organisations to come and be our sponsors for this year. We've got we've got about 13 different categories. We're looking for a headline sponsor. If we don't get, basically the awards is run on a non-for-profit basis. Whatever we get as an income, we also then we just spend on the award night. So it's nothing that we're actually making a profit. We just want to raise the profile of apprenticeships, support apprenticeships, and of course we really invite you to make your employers aware of it. Nominate you as providers, nominate themselves and nominate their apprentices for an award. There's the entry date, 16th of November. Closing date for entries is 19th of February. If you haven't been to the awards, we've got a highlight film we can show you. It's a fantastic evening. It's going to be at Williams F1 again. But we'd really like to ask you for your help and support to try and reach out to some more businesses and organisations that may not have heard of the awards, and to really invite them to get involved. So that's me, I think, Mel. Oh, an annual event, finally, sorry. We're running an annual event 30th of October at the Oxford Belfry. Please come and join us. It'd be great to see you. There's the Eventbrite link if you'd like to come along, hear about really not just Skills Hub work, but all of the work across OxLEP. And we've had a team brief this morning, really impressive. And I say that being part of the organisation, but you know what the Business Hub's doing, internationalisation's doing, is really quite incredible. Come and join us, come and have a chat, meet the team, and really it would be great to have you along. So there's a link. So 30th of October. Next slide, Mel. And so talking about LSIP, so Simon, I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Sally, and good morning, everyone. Hi to those that I have met before. I recognise some names and faces, and hello to those that I haven't met. I'm Simon Barrable. I'm an engagement officer working on the Thames Valley Skills unit, which is part of Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce, and our main role obviously has been the research and writing of the LSIP reports for Oxfordshire and Berkshire, and now the delivery of the action plans within them. If I could have the next slide, please, Mel. So I'm going to do a quick recap on LSIPs themselves, progress in Oxfordshire so far, and perhaps most importantly the roadmap and the actions, and just a focus on what opportunities there could be in there for education and training providers. Next slide, please, Mel. So I just wanted to start with our values actually initially, which I think are important. You know, that we very much believe within the team and the way we want to work. I mean, to pick some of these out, I think the people first approach is really important. You know, skills, education, training is ultimately, it comes down to people and their futures. I think the co-working approach that's on there is really important. If we're going to make progress, then partnership working is going to be critical. We are kind of playing a long game. We know that, you know, you don't solve these kind of skills gaps quickly. It's a longer term piece of work, and the current iteration of the LSIPs is funded to March 2025, so at least we've got a bit of time to drive through the actions. And I think perhaps the most critical one is the one about adding value. We're very aware there's lots and lots of great work going on in the skills space across both Oxfordshire and Berkshire actually. So, you know, and we're looking to build on that and add value where we can to that. Thanks, Mel. So in terms of what they are, I'm sure most people on the call know, I mean, basically looking at initially it was a large piece of research around recruitment difficulties for employers and skills gaps that they were suffering from, if you like, and then matching that against existing training offer, and then looking at where the gaps are and what more could be done to fill them. It's very much employer focused, very employer led. That was absolutely our remit throughout, really. Thanks, Mel. So in terms of those employees, you can see, we're on around 9,000 engagements since last November with local businesses. So we've been able to capture the voice, I guess, of Oxfordshire business reasonably well in that time period. Thanks, Mel. I mean, what we found really in talking to employers is a very complex picture in terms of trying to meet skills needs. I don't need to tell you people on the call that, do I really? But there's a very specific focus really for LSIPs, and you can see this kind of hopper. The balls that are in the hopper are the ones that the LSIPs are focused on there. So for us, it's very much around applicants that are lacking skills. It's around current skills gaps that are holding back productivity. It's about new skills gaps that are emerging largely because of technological change, and it's around hard to recruit roles. And you can see some of the stuff that comes out the bottom of that really is the stuff that's of interest, I think, to yourselves as training providers, because there is a need and there will be opportunities for a range of new qualifications and training programs on the back of the LSIP research. And you've just been hearing about that from Sally and the skills boot camps there, many of which match the conclusions that the LSIP found. Thanks, Mel. So in terms of what we discovered so far in Oxfordshire, some of the challenges, I suppose, the fragmented nature of employer demand, just because there's so many SMEs in the county. So really there's something about trying to bring those SMEs together to get more coherent training needs messages across to people like yourselves, which then makes it easier to meet those needs. There is a very tight labour market currently. I guess there's good things about that as well, particularly for young people coming into the workplace. There's opportunities for them. Likewise, there's opportunities for older people to move careers or to come back into employment as well. There are, however, issues about inequality and lack of access to employment opportunities, and in some parts of the county also training opportunities because of the very rural nature and quite poor transport links in parts of Oxfordshire. And there's obviously challenges around technological change, particularly around digital skills and around green skills. Thanks, Mel. So priority sectors that we're covering are, you can see there, we weren't tasked with covering every part of the economy. We researched LMI. We looked at the sectors that were the fastest growing or projected to be the fastest growing in the next few years. We looked at sectors that had the biggest recruitment difficulties, and we looked at sectors that had the worst skills gaps. It's also very much a focus on technical and vocational education, the LSIPs as well. So that's the space we're operating in. We did also identify a number of transferable skills that employers right across the sector were saying they were in need of, as you can see on the bottom of the slide there. I would probably also add employability skills to that as a real umbrella term. We were hearing that message a lot from employers. So whether that's communication, team working, self-confidence, ability to use initiative, critical thinking, that those kinds of skills were coming up quite a lot in our conversations as well. Thanks, Mel. So what the LSIP really breaks down into, and this is this section of the report is probably the most interesting and useful for training providers. I've taken the example of health and life sciences here, but we've done this for each of the priority sectors. You can probably just about see on here, but I'm sure the slides will be shared afterwards. But the left-hand column talks about the key recruitment difficulties that employers were reporting to us, and which we were seeing in the data as well. And then tracking across the table, you can see different qualification frameworks that people could get onto in order to get the job that there's a shortage in. So this I think is a useful set of pages in the document for training providers, because it clearly shows where opportunities are. It shows where employers are having recruitment difficulties. It shows the training routes that would help to fill those vacancies, and it shows whether or not they're actually running in Oxfordshire currently. If they're in dark orange, they're not currently running in Oxfordshire, so there's clearly opportunities there. If they're in light orange, they're running, but with very small start numbers, so there's scope for growing those qualification and training routes going forward. Okay, thanks, Mel. So in terms of the roadmap, this is what we're calling the action plan, essentially, which comes at the end of the LSIP. Some of the key priorities there, which I've touched upon, the partnership working, the need to be inclusive to overcome some of the barriers that people currently have, aspiration very much around a number of those priority sectors doing more to be seen to be more aspirational, particularly for young people. Some of those priority sectors are not seen as that attractive to some young people currently, and there's more to be done about explaining the breadth of opportunity within them, and really the training people for careers, not jobs, is all it speaks really to some of those employability skills, those wider professional skills that are going to help people progress in careers once they get their foot in the door. Thanks, Mel. So just very quickly in terms of solutions, the first key idea in the action plan is probably the most important one for education and training providers, because there's clearly going to be a need for and an opportunity for new education and training provision across the county. And you can see on the right hand column there various different types of funding that could be used to create these new training programs. Everything from the skills boot camps you've heard about from Sally, through to the LSIF funding, which the colleges are accessing currently, through to various types of post-19 funding, including the Innovation Fund, and some new funding that will be coming down the line soon to help to meet the lifelong learning entitlement, around areas such as higher technical qualifications, for example. So I would say that the LSIPs across the country really have just kind of shaken the tree a little bit and provided new opportunities and some new funding. I admit not a huge amount, but some new funding to start running the new education and training programs that are going to be needed to meet the priorities that have been identified in the plan itself. Thanks, Mel. Just very quickly, some other things we're working on. So workforce development partnerships for some of the key priority sectors. You can see construction, life sciences and hospitality in Oxfordshire. So looking to bring employers, education and training providers and careers providers together to work on solutions. So keep an eye on our social media channels for more on those. Thanks, Mel. We're also producing a guide for working together on shaping the workforce. This is going to be an online platform which is really about sharing good practice. It's about looking at all the good things that are happening currently and putting that all in one place so that people can share and learn from one another. And we're looking to launch that around about February, March next year. Thanks, Mel. And then just finally, one slightly more kind of out there idea that we've got. We haven't done any work on progressing it yet, but we are looking at the idea of a pilot for a Thames Valley skilled practitioner program. This would see apprentices on completion of their apprenticeship get recognition as skilled practitioners in the areas they've taken that apprenticeship in. So in the same way that university students become graduates, we're just toying with the idea of apprentices becoming something, becoming a skilled practitioner and getting that recognition, partly with a view to increasing the attractiveness, I suppose, and the appeal and the publicity around those kind of vocational routes as opposed to academic routes. So, you know, watch this space on that one. Thanks, Mel. I think that's it, and I wanted to try and leave some time for any question and answer, but and also happy, you know, Mark, for you to chip in as well at this point, because I know you were against this item on the agenda, weren't you?
I wasn't against it, no.
No, not against it. I mean on. Sorry, I don't mean against
Yes.
it. I mean your word was next to
Assigned.
it in the column. Sorry, pure.
I think if you
poor choice of words.
If you ask Kate that ran the sort of the LSIP, I've voiced my opinion several times on the LSIP, so I thought you were going to invite me to do that again, but no. Has anyone got any questions? Because in terms of the LSIP, or yeah, Paul, shoot.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks, Simon. That's very informative and very useful, I'm sure, for all of us. So going back to the funding, if I may, obviously it is a very, very fragmented and sort of convoluted funding scenario that we have to navigate as training providers, even more so for employers. It's an absolute minefield, I think it's fair to say. Are there any plans as part of this LSIP to sort of formulate some sort of central repository whereby it will sort of help to explain, both for an employer and indeed provider perspective, what funding streams are available, how they can access it, perhaps more importantly? Would that be within the scope of this, or is this slightly outside the scope?
I think it could well be in the scope of that guide for working together. You know, the guide for working together is about really how making it easier for employers and training providers to work together, and part of that, you know, those funding streams certainly fall into scope, I think, there, Paul. I think some of that work might happen through the workforce development partnerships as well, where we're you know, getting education and training providers and employers in the same room together to talk about these, you know, these kinds of things as well for some of those core sectors that we're running those in.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, what I was going to say is we don't have the power to simplify it, I'm afraid.
Of course, yeah.
That is beyond us.
Sadly, yeah.
All I was going to say, Paul, was I think the key thing for us as training providers that can come out of the LSIP is the workforce development partnership meetings, and that ability to get in front of employers and talk about what we're able to offer, and get people in the same room and trying to engage employers in the different types of training that are available, and how they can access it and what they can do. I don't think there's ever going to be a magic sort of page that says where all the funding is, because it is quite convoluted. But I think, as Simon said, the LSIF funding is going to be challenged mostly through the colleges. So there may be opportunities for us to access some of that via the colleges if they need support or whatever it might be, but I doubt it. I think the big for independent training providers, I think the big positive that's come from the LSIP is the fact that it's engaging businesses with training and talking. And to be honest with you, they did speak to a lot of people, but it's still only a very small percentage of the employers in Oxfordshire. So there's still a lot to do in that front as well. But that's where we can get benefit from the LSIP and the information that's come out of it and the work that goes beyond it. Rob.
Oh yeah, just trying to unmute myself. Yeah, thanks, Simon. That was very interesting, particularly for me, because I run a scientific training provider. So some of those recruitment bottlenecks were the apprenticeship standards that we actually deliver. So really interesting. Perhaps we could catch up after this meeting. But my question really is, you were talking about recognition for apprentices when they exit their apprenticeship standard. So certainly in the STEM sector, there is professional recognition with organisations sponsored by the Science Council, so Royal Society of Chemistry, Royal Society of Biology. So at level 3, for example, it's a registered lab science technician with the Royal Society of Chemistry, or registered laboratory technician with the Royal Society of Biology. So were your thoughts around contacting professional bodies to recognise apprentices' achievements, or is this something that you're going to be developing in-house, or is it too early to say?
I think, well, first of all, Rob, very happy to catch up, you know, up outside the meeting, you know, for sure. I think it's probably too early to say is the honest answer on it, but I suspect it will probably be a combination of both, actually, because what we're going to need to get is a whole range of employers and apprenticeship providers and some professional bodies really to sign up to this if it's going to have the kind of weightiness, if you like, to make it worthwhile and worth pursuing, and for those apprentices to worth having, I guess. So but yeah, being able to tap into some of those professional bodies where, you know, that recognition is already happening would be great. Of course, in other areas that doesn't happen, and you don't get that kind of recognition. So yeah, you know, happy to have a further conversation around that as well.
So Simon, what I would say is that there was a certain reticence some years ago from the professional bodies that we work with, but they've incorporated that recognition now with a low level of membership if it's an entry level type apprenticeship. And the professional bodies are very keen to increase their membership. So you might find, if you reach out to the relevant professional bodies, that they will be keen to sponsor some kind of recognition, as long as it ties in with membership.
Yeah, okay, that's a great tip for us to follow up, and sponsorship will be important from somewhere to make this, you know, to make it meaningful, really. So yeah, it'd be good to have a conversation around that as well, Rob.
Great.
Has anyone else got any other questions? Otherwise, we can move on. Great. Back to you, Paul.
Okay, thanks ever so much. And once again, I'd like to reiterate my appreciation. That was really interesting. Apologies, I am digressing slightly. Sally, if I could come back to you in terms of your very sort of helpful and insightful overview as well. You mentioned the application went in last week. Forgive me if I've missed this. Does it give an indication when you're likely to hear the outcome of this skills bootcamp?
Yeah, so we're hopeful that we should hear quite soon. DfE, I don't know if I should say this, but DfE don't have a great reputation of responding quickly. However,
surely not.
For boot camps, for this actually, we're working actually with the Thames Valley LEP in helping us with this application. They've actually been saying how brilliant DfE have been in responding. So we're hopeful that we should hear within the next month, with lots of crossed fingers, as you can see. So yeah, and you know, we are going to be working under the presumption in a way that we're going to start. We will get the nod, because actually we are a cold spot. Oxfordshire's cold spot for DfE. They want to be delivering boot camps here. I know that it is competitive, because there's other regions that are having to apply for their delivery for next year as well. So we're definitely not guaranteed. We might get less, might get the full requirement, but we're going to work and move forward. So we will be looking to kind of think, okay, yeah, we're under the presumption we're going to go ahead. So if that helps, and start really cracking on for it.
That's really useful. Thank you. Do excuse me. So it's good to get some form of approximate timescale around these things. So
yep,
very useful indeed. Thank you. So we move on now to Andrew, who's given us a bit of an overview in relation to the support available for apprenticeship completions. And of course, this is becoming more and more pertinent and prevalent. Not least of which, of course, because there's an apprentice at the end of this. We want to see them achieve, we want to see them progress, but also, of course, the accountability framework that we're all obliged to work under when delivering apprenticeships now. So, Andrea, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am one of the newest member to the OxLEP Skills team. Just a very brief background, because I know we're running slightly over. I come into OxLEP having had, I wanted to say 13 years experience in apprenticeships, but realised the years go on and on. So it's now actually 17 years of apprenticeship experience, starting off in the very beginning as an assessor and then becoming a head of apprenticeships deliverer. So that's a little bit of background for myself. Hopefully, I'm going to get to know a lot of you going forward, so we can talk more about the background and the experience that I can bring. So I really hope from the back of this discussion this morning that we start to forge some great relationships in obviously getting apprenticeship completions. I think one of the things that we're identified from OxLEP is that there are common challenges that I don't need to explain to training providers about, that are faced by employers and yourselves. Could we go on to the next slide, please, Mel? Thank you. So the task in hand is to deliver against a 12-month plan to increase the completions across the Oxfordshire region. These will be working with independent training providers, the national providers, but mainly the SMEs as well, who seem to have a little bit of an unheard voice in completions. What I'm wanting to do is identify and engage with employers, local and regional training providers, which is where I'm reaching out to you today, who have active apprentices, to provide that additional, and it's fully funded mechanism to support with any barriers or challenges that are being faced. What I would say, I've already identified and worked with a couple of employers, spoken to training providers as well already, who are embracing this opportunity. And whilst the focus is going to be on completions for 23-24 academic year, anybody on the apprenticeship journey is welcome to have the support. It goes without saying, I think endpoint assessment, you start talking about it at the beginning, not at the end. So anybody on the apprenticeship journey is welcome, the employers, to have that support. Where support is given, it's very much on a basis that is workable to the employer. What has happened with one employer I've reached out to and worked with, they have an apprentice at the beginning of their journey, their learner journey. So we've agreed to have quarterly meetings to support them. However, the meetings can be tailored to fit in to the apprentice needs. So obviously, with the completions for 23-24, those meetings can be tailored to hold them more regularly, depending on the support that's required. What is also planned is to have a series of webinars to increase awareness around endpoint assessment and completions, again aimed at SMEs, but also training providers as well. And that series, we're hoping, well, not hoping, it will be launched in January. The first one will start in January. There will be a series of 6 lunchtime webinars. So again, really would like your engagement on that to get as many people involved as possible. Mark, could we have the next slide, please? Have I dropped out? Oh, no. Sorry, thank you. Sorry. I live in an area where I often get outages, so apologies if I do drop out. So why really looking at this? I recognise from some of the organisations that are on the call today, you were represented at the Endpoint Assessment Conference held in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. And what really came out of that, some key points that came out from the endpoint assessment conference, was that apprentices and employers alike said that the process was more involved than originally thought. And I think that sometimes goes back to, and I know it's getting an awful lot better, but the endpoint assessment process is highlighted in the beginning, but then not necessarily followed through in the in-depthness that is needed for endpoint assessment throughout the course of the programme. So that was one of the key highlights, more involved than originally thought with the different aspects of it. One that came out from the employers was a better understanding of timelines and milestones within the apprenticeship journey as well. Getting to Gateway, the mandatory requirements for Gateway, and any technical qualifications that are needed, or mandatory qualifications that are needed to actually reach the milestones to get through Gateway towards endpoint assessment. One of the things that also came out from the endpoint assessment process itself and the assessment methods, which I thought was quite interesting, was projects, standards that have projects at their endpoint assessment. That seemed to be an area where apprentices and employers alike would have liked to have more training around that. So whether that's something that can be incorporated into any of the support that we give here at OxLEP, that's certainly something to look at. But that did seem to be quite a barrier for the apprentices when they got to endpoint assessment. And from an employer point of view, especially the employers that were working in the more niche areas, capacity planning around the endpoint assessment and making sure that those endpoint assessments came in timely for the apprentices and obviously the training providers. So that was another area that was looked at the conference. And I think, as I've heard throughout this morning's meeting, the SME engagement, the SMEs still don't necessarily have a great voice in apprenticeships, alongside the smaller training providers, the independent training providers. So it's really trying to get a bigger engagement with the SMEs around apprenticeships and how they can be supported. And that's why really I'm putting out a call out to everybody today to reach out to me, so that we can, work together on this. I think it's an exciting, somewhat challenging task ahead, but I think working together in partnership, working together with the endpoint assessment organisations as well, can only help support training providers, employers, and, as we've said, the most important, the apprentices, to complete and hopefully get those numbers up across the region. So that's my delivery for today. I don't know if anyone has any questions off the back of this at all.
Thank you, Andrea. That was really interesting. One sort of generic question, if I may, please. Obviously, we're an Oxfordshire-based training provider. However, our apprentices are scattered a sort of length and breadth of England. So in terms of potential support available for employers that maybe not necessarily be within the Oxfordshire region, even though we are as the training provider, is that something that you could potentially assist with? How does it work? Are there geographical restrictions around that?
Now, my understanding, and I will refer back to Sally on this one, but my understanding is that we're working with national providers with apprentices in the Oxfordshire region, and we would be working with Oxfordshire regional training providers with apprentices in the Oxfordshire region. But I'm fully prepared to be corrected on that.
No, that's right. That's right, Andrea. I mean, it's just because of the funding guidance that we've got from County Council through the comp funding, which is paying for it. That's what we need to be delivering on.
I would say, as a caveat to that obviously, Paul, if any of the seminars or webinars that you attended, obviously you can take that back and use that, wherever you need to use it, perhaps for employers and learners that are outside of the region.
Perfect. Thank you. I thought that would be the case, but I thought it'd be good to get some clarity around that point. So thank you for that. So, hi, Caroline.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
we got
so
you. Thank you.
I'm a
Yeah.
little bit croaky, sorry, because I'm also been getting over COVID and lots of other things this year. But I just wanted to pick up on some of Andrea's points, because I think what you do say is completely valid. I manage an endpoint assessment organisation. We do endpoint assessments all over the UK. And we do things a little bit different. We're based at the Harwell Science campus, but what we do with our training providers, universities and colleges, is we get involved with student inductions. So as soon as an apprentice is uploaded to our ACE 360 LMS system, we engage straight away. So if that learner's uploaded 6 weeks after they're enrolled onto their apprenticeship, our EPA coordinators will engage with those apprentices. We're not giving them anything ahead of gateway that we shouldn't be giving them. It's all open source information. But what we do is provide information sessions, Q&A sessions, webinars, one-to-one sessions on Teams, and that's just standard practice for us. Now, I think we are a little bit different to other EPAOs. Some large EPAOs don't do that, but that has worked absolutely fantastic for us. All of our EPA coordinators are ex-apprentices and have done their training with a local Oxford provider and another EPAO. And so I think we try to really value what we think the apprentices need. And so we do get involved very early on. And in terms of the projects you talked about, we do provide guides and support guides, and we do fortnightly meetings with our training providers to give them hints and tips and things that they need to be working on and working with to make sure their apprentices are hitting the standard. Because it's frustrating for us as well when, you know, you'll have a project handed in and it's just not going to meet the mark. So actually, by providing them, the apprentices and employers and training providers, the advice and support throughout the entire programme has worked fantastic for us and our success rates for EPA and for our training providers.
I think, Caroline, completely agree with what you've said there. And at the EPA conference, one of the things that was also highlighted from an EPAO point of view is that it seems that maybe the smaller EPAOs do offer that from the very beginning, that sort of relationship with the employer and the apprentice. And I think going back to when standards first came about and EPAOs, there was that sort of boundary whereby they didn't get involved, and I dare say that some of the bigger ones still don't get involved, but I think they do want to, because it makes for a seamless process. It's only going to aid the apprentice to actually achieve the apprenticeship, which is what everybody wants. That, you know, that's the ultimate goal. So it'd be really great to, you know, touch base with you maybe afterwards, and especially if I come down to Harwell, come and visit you. But I think that's a great stance to take, and I think more EPAOs want to do that. And one last thing, because I know we're running out of time, and I know I can see Rob has his hand up, was that there's a greater call for standardisation with EPAOs, because there seems to be a lot of disparity across standards, across what is being called for. So that was one thing that was taken away from the conference, is that looking at standardisation across endpoint assessment organisations. So hopefully they'll take on board more of what your organisation is doing.
Well, I think you've got a number of issues with the standardisation. You've got endpoint assessment plans that aren't consistent across the sectors. They're all designed different ways, written different ways. So we have 33 standards that we endpoint assess across 8 sectors. But also, if you look at some of the endpoint assessment plans, it asks for standardisation twice a year as a minimum, potential on most of them. And we do that far more. And you have to do it far more to make sure you are giving a quality service. Otherwise, you'll have assessors not following the same quality standard. We have assessors based here in Oxford, but we also use associate model as well. We have a blended model. So your standardisation, I completely agree with as well.
Okay. Rob, sorry, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. That was really interesting. and Caroline, that was also really interesting from an EPA point of view, that there is this kind of no man's land pre-gateway where some endpoint assessment organisations are saying we're not going to perform assessment or any type of assessment other than a gateway check. The assessment will happen at the end, and that's endpoint assessment. So that will determine how effective you've been at collecting the KSBs. Whereas there's a big argument from training providers, particularly with projects, is we need that support pre-gateway to make sure learners that are in the EPA period aren't completely off spec, because if they fail their project, they fail their endpoint assessment. So a little bit of AIG pre-gateway would be great. So that's something I particularly I'm interested in. And my question is, if you're looking, or if you're helping with Oxfordshire QAR data and completion rates, what's your remit there? Are you going to be speaking to the endpoint assessment organisations as well as training providers?
Absolutely. I think it needs to be three ways. It needs to be the employers, the training providers, and the endpoint assessment organisations. Obviously any support is impartial, but I'm happy to, take on board and take questions to endpoint organisations that I've worked with previously. And I think from the conversations that I had with a couple of the larger ones at the conference is that they really do want to get more on board. But like you said, I think there's definitely still that line or that border between when do endpoint assessment organisations start to get involved. I think from what Caroline has said, that model to me is the model that needs to be adopted. But I still think there's that reluctance, dare I say, from endpoint assessment organisations or training providers, maybe not a reluctance, or maybe just that discussion's not taking place and not getting them involved at induction.
I think what a lot of EPAOs will say, it's not in the assessment plan. So it's not in the assessment plan. We don't perform assessment there. We're led by the assessment plan. So, probably a wider trailblazer thing.
Yes, yeah.
In the future.
I think the conversations that can be had should be had, and it can only help. It can only help going forward.
Yeah, absolutely concur, Andrea. So thank you for that. And I think the sort of point to take away for all of us perhaps is just maintaining those open channels of communication, that three-way channel: employer, EPAO, training provider.
Absolutely.
And the more we enter into that sort of mindset and regime, the better it becomes and the smoother for all parties. But I do concur with one of the points you've raised, that anecdotally, in our experience, the smaller EPAOs seem to be a lot more responsive and on it, really, when it comes to the service to both ourselves and indeed the apprentice and the employer. So anyway, that's just anecdotal there. So thank you very much for that. That's appreciated. Right. Okay, so apologies for the fact we are running slightly over. My fault entirely. I'm a rubbish timekeeper, clearly. So if I can hand back to Rob at this stage, who's going to give us an overview in relation to the Apprentice Decent Wage Pledge, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be quick. I've got 12 slides, and we probably won't be looking at all of them just because of the various time constraints. So, as a very brief introduction, the Back the Future campaign, the Apprentice Decent Wage Pledge, isn't ours. We're merely custodians of it. So we, as a training provider, look after the website, look after inquiries. So we're facilitators. Could we have the next slide, please, Mel? So the actual pledge itself is a collective. The majority of people who pledge are employers, but the pledge is also open to training providers and individuals with an interest in the wage pledge. One more, please, Mel. So the founder, it's a name you don't easily forget, or it's quite easy to forget depending on which way you look at it, is a chap called Robert Ramsey Gosling Kennedy. He is, you may have come across him. He leads several trailblazer groups. He looks after 7 or 8 trailblazer groups. He's actually employed by an organisation called LabCorp, and he's the global talent acquisition manager for LabCorp. So he has a vested interest in apprenticeships from a professional point of view, but he also contributes a heck of a lot of his own personal time into the development of apprenticeships through his work with the Trailblazer Group and with his work with the Decent Wage Pledge. So essentially, to give you a flavour of what the pledge is about, really, its fundamental mission is to improve social mobility. So it's to encourage employers to pay more than the apprentice minimum wage. And the rationale behind that is that we want people to enter into those legal and finance sectors, into health and science sectors, into administration sectors, into catering sectors, into business administration sectors. And if they're not doing that because they can get a better salary at Sainsbury's or at Tesco's, then that's detrimental to our sector. We're all familiar with those skills gaps, and Simon touched on some of them earlier. And actually, the wage pledge is, in my opinion, could be a fundamental reason for our QAR data being what it is. A lot of apprentices will leave their apprenticeship program due to financial reasons, because they're not getting paid enough money, and they can earn more or equivalent money elsewhere. So we have the next slide, please, Mel. As we've mentioned, that we are the caretakers. So when you get this slide deck, you can click on that CSR logo and it takes you to our site. But we're a specialist scientific training provider. However, the pledge is pan-sector. We want it to apply to all apprenticeship providers and all apprenticeship employers. Next slide, please, Mel. So as I said, that this is the basic mission of the pledge, to address social mobility. And we want maximum uptake in apprenticeship. So what we're experiencing actually in our area, which is STEM, there's a bit of a renaissance in apprenticeships at the moment. There seems to be a huge demand, particularly from employers, and we're just about filling all of those vacancies, but it's still a bit of a battle trying to find enough candidates for employer vacancies. So that's where the wage pledge is particularly important, particularly for those sectors where employers are struggling to recruit. And I don't think we should be afraid as training providers to say to our employers, look, have you considered paying slightly more if you're struggling to recruit in that area? And actually, the wage pledge is a nice facilitator for that, because your employers can join the pledge. They get the Back the Future badge. By the way, you as training providers can also join the pledge. You don't need to be an employer of apprentices. All you need to do is pledge to ensure that if you ever did employ an apprentice, you would consider paying them more than the minimum wage. So the pledge itself, there is no barrier to entry. There is no membership cost. It is a committee, and the sole reason for the pledge is just to increase the apprentice uptake. And make sure people aren't turned off or turned away from a meaningful work-based career in a subject when they can earn more money in retail, for example. Next slide, please. So we know, we talked about our QAR data being published in October, and to hit that 99% mark is fiction. We know that, but I think if employers were going to be considering paying more, that would certainly address some of the problems we face as training providers. There's nothing more frustrating than an independent training provider or an FE college putting all the hard yards in the graft, and actually the apprentice leaves because of an issue at work, and it's not linked to the great work that we've done. And often those issues are that they're not getting enough money. So that's certainly a huge current issue that affects apprentices first and foremost, but also us as professional educators. So and we talked about opportunity. So if learners aren't being given that opportunity to maybe work in a science environment, an engineering environment, a legal or a financial environment, then that's a huge shame, and actually it's detrimental to the UK economy. Next slide, please. And again, it's in my experience, CSR works with about 130 large employers, and we haven't seen this in the last 3 or 4 years, but there are still some employers out there who are taking advantage of the apprenticeship system, and actually that's the detriment to everybody else in the pool. So this decent wage pledge is some way designed to insulate employers from seeing apprentices as cheap labour. There's also some issues with the benefit system. And one of the remits of the pledge is to actually look at that benefit system, because as you can see there, that final bullet point, so they have a direct impact, this is lower apprenticeship wages, on families who are on low income who are claiming benefits. So there's actually a bit of work going on in the background with the government, looking at the benefit system and trying to ensure that apprenticeship wages don't have a detrimental impact on families who are on benefits, not the individual, but the families who are on benefits. So next slide, please. You can see that we've got there's just an example of some of our pledges there. You may have heard of Coca-Cola or the University of Oxford. So we've got some very large employers there, but we also have a good SME membership, and there's more members than this. We kind of on the website we just rotate these badges, and actually the Decent Wage Pledge is still really in its infancy at the moment. When you pledge, you'll join and you'll get an information pack. What we're looking to do is to run Apprentice Decent Wage Pledge Hall of Fame every month, to do a case study on a pledger. We have ITV who are interested in the pledge and want some case studies from us, so it's really gathering traction. The remit, by the way, isn't to directly lobby the government, so there's a bit of work going on with the benefit system, but the remit really is just to raise awareness through critical mass. So the more and more people that get involved in this, the more employers will be committing and physically paying people a better wage. One more, please, Mel. So we've said really that it's open to anybody. You can join the wage pledge at any time. So that the majority of our members are employers. So as training providers on this call, you may want to put this under the nose of your employer. And at the moment, it's a very loose commitment. It's either to be paying more than the minimum wage, which is £5.28 per hour, by the way. So you probably know the minimum wage kind of rules is that you can pay £5.28 per hour for somebody under the age of 19, or you can pay that to somebody in the first year of their apprenticeship. So we're looking to hugely discourage people from paying that and to pay more. Next one, please, Mel. So there's just some conditions there about what we really ask our members to do, and as I said, it's really about a pledge, and it's about critical mass, and it's about spreading the word. I'm conscious that we're about to run out of time, so next slide, please, Mel. To join, it's very simple. There's a link at the start of this slide, which takes the start of this slide deck, sorry, which takes you to the Wage Pledge website. This particular link will take you to the How to Join page, and it's a screenshot. It's not that clear. So there's name, job title, your company email, number of employees at your organisation, your location. Would you like to help us develop resources, and how much you're currently paying your apprentices. If that's not applicable, you just put NA in there. As I said, it's not just training providers and employers that can join it. Anybody can join. Just one more, please, Mel. So that's the end of the input. If you actually go onto the site, there is some detail about the mission and the vision, about what the minimum wage rates currently are, and a few case studies, but it's a relatively simple platform as it's run by volunteers and a committee. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks for listening.
Perfect. Thanks ever so much for that, Rob. Incredibly laudable, and I'm sure that's something that we can all get behind, actually. So, dare I say, as a collective, it's in our interest to be supporting such initiatives as well. So, yeah, 100% behind that. So please do sign up. So thank you for that. Any sort of questions in relation to that at all from anyone? Nope. So I shall move swiftly on then and
Sorry,
hand back to. Sorry, apologies.
Sorry.
Sorry, Mark.
I work with a lot of SMEs who.
Have I just lost Mark, or has
Yeah,
everyone else lost
Mark's just gone.
Yeah.
I do that when I'm about to get a really tricky question, so that I've just frozen it.
Just pause at that point.
Isn't it typical that happens? No, just two things. I work with a lot of SMEs who find this actually quite difficult because actually they pay what they can and they offer really, really great apprenticeships. And so I wonder whether this is something that whether there's any guidance as that you should put on this in terms of company size or anything like that, so it doesn't dissuade smaller companies from actually even starting an apprenticeship because they feel like they're going to be underpaying their people, even though it's what they can afford. And my second question is the group doing anything to lobby government to raise that apprenticeship minimum wage, so then it's taken out of the hands to a certain extent of the employer, and you start to push those numbers up from sort of governance point of view rather than people signing up to a pledge?
Yeah, two great points there, Mark. So the first one, under our criteria on the website, and the last thing, Mark, we want to do is dissuade SMEs from participating in the apprenticeship space, because we know it is a struggle, and with OJT being a huge blocker for them, we don't want it to be a financial blocker as well. So part of that, and maybe we can make it clearer, is that it's a pledge that if you're currently paying minimum wage, in the future you may look to increase that, and that's something that we can certainly put in bold, and maybe have a section for SME on there. That's a really valid point. In terms of lobbying, it's not currently the function of the Decent Wage Pledge. It's not a lobbying organisation, and it's still in its infancy. I think if we get more members, and if some of that membership group are interested in lobbying the government to increase that baseline wage, then that's yes, we're always going to say yes to that.
Perfect. Thank you. So, in the absence of any further questions, I'll hand back to Sally. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And so, sorry, we're running 5 minutes over. It's just really for me to kind of wrap up the meeting, and just to really want to say thank you to Simon and Andrea and Rob for their input, and obviously Paul and Mark for chairing. I think this is our last meeting of the year, a bit scary. We will send out some dates for the next year's meetings for next year. Hopefully you'll make it, and also agree whether we would like to do a face-to-face meeting. Very happy to host and give you a bit of a breakfast or lunch and get together physically, or whether people would just prefer just to meet online. But let's just take it off and we'll have a chat. But really just want to say thank you, and hopefully these sessions have been really helpful and informative. If you do have anything you would like to include for future agendas, please let us know. Mel, you've got your hand up.
Yes, sorry, just one quick thing to add before we disappear. From our Careers and Enterprise Company team, the dates are set for Careers Fest for next year. So we'll be contacting you to ask if you'd like to be an exhibitor at Careers Fest shortly as well. So watch this space for information coming about that as well. Thank you. Thanks, Sally.
Perfect. So Careers Fest, if you're not aware, is going to be held at the Kassam Stadium in March. It has over 2,500 plus young people come for those 2 days to talk about future career destinations, and also have a twilight session for parents and carers. So it's really, really worth being in the room for that. It is just a fantastic thing, and it doesn't cost. We're going to invite for donations for 100 quid so we can help schools pay for their school transport. But yeah, I'd like to encourage you to sign up. But really want to say thank you very much. And like I say, please send anything you'd like to include for future agenda items in. That would be really great. This is definitely run by you, and we're happy to support on that delivery. Mark and Paul, anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. I think that encapsulated it perfectly. So we welcome any contributions in terms of sort of forthcoming agenda items, just to reiterate and confirm. And yeah, just a final plug for the Apprenticeship Award evening. So it is a truly exceptional evening, and I know a lot of work goes into facilitating that. So yeah, please do consider dipping your hand in your pocket and seeing if you can sort of sponsor one of the categories or such like. So thank you again, everyone. So if there's no further elements, I think we'll probably draw it to a close then.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.